As we're joined now by the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, his podcast, 100% Hockey, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia, Mr. John Shannon. How are you, John?
I'm great, boys. You?
Good. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Looking forward to the games and Canada's performance, and of course then looking forward to the NHL and the trade deadline, which comes just 12 days thereafter. I wanted to start there because I think the last time we were talking to you, we were talking about this Olympic roster freeze. Would it serve as sort of a soft trade deadline? You had these owners who didn't necessarily want to trade for a guy and have to pay him and spend cap space for him to sit around on a beach during the break. And then you had other teams saying, no, we got to get our business done by this deadline. Look, a big trade for Panarin and a couple other small ones, but do you think the floodgates are going to be unleashed here when the roster freeze lifts?
I do, actually. I do think that the deadline in March may be moot by the time everything is finished. It certainly sounds and looks like if you're not working for a management team at the Olympics, you've taken this week off. You've gone to Mexico, you've gone to the Caribbean, you're going to a weekend in Victoria. This is a real, pardon for the big word, but a denouement before the 17th when people get back at it to start talking. And I think there'll be a ton of talk starting next week again. And I think that there'll be a lot of internal agreement or disagreement at clubs, whether you think you're a buyer or a seller. Owners always want to be buyers. Managers want to save their jobs, so they want to be sellers if they have to be. And so I think by the time the freeze lifts, on the, 22nd, I guess, then we're going to see some movement 23, 24, 25 before the games, the NHL games start again. I just, it doesn't make any sense if you want to sprint to the playoffs. It doesn't make any sense to wait until the last moment anymore. Yeah. You do have time to, like, the guys will have time to construct 3-team deals, which we have seen much more prevalent in the last years. And you're moving as much money as you are players and draft picks. So I think that whole week where there are no games and managers can talk to each other and then get on a conference call if you have to try to create something. I think we're going to see a little bit more before the end of February.
Yeah, I hear you because honestly, unless you're so cap tight that like 10 days of accrual matters to you, then why not get your business done coming right out of this Olympic freeze? As for the Canucks, John, look, they've got unrestricted free agents like Evander Kane and Teddy Bluger to peddle, but we're all sitting here wondering, okay, will there be a veteran with term that gets moved? Either a guy like a Connor Garland who doesn't have any trade protection, or even someone like a Jake DeBrusk, Elias Pettersson, who does have trade protection. What's your sense on how aggressive this Canucks rebuild or retool is going to be coming out of this break?
I don't think we have a complete sense of it yet, but my gut tells me everything's on the table. If we are talking about buying into the next 2 years being developmental, how's that? Then I think that then everybody has to be on the table. It's too bad because as players, Garland and DeBrusk are valuable assets. They are people I feel you want to build around. Those are the types of guys you like on your team. Pettersson's an interesting story. And you know what, Matt? I will tell you right now, the barometer on Pettersson might change after we watch this Olympic tournament. Because I don't think we know, honestly, and I've had this conversation with a couple of guys. First 2 years when he was in the league, we all marveled at him. We thought he was unbelievable. We thought he was tenacious. We thought he was creative. We thought he could do everything. Well, I'm not sure where that guy is right now. And so perhaps playing for Sweden, he can rekindle a little bit of that. And if that's the case, if you're the Canucks, you can look at this and say, you know what, that's the guy, that's our guy. We believe in him. Or somebody from the outside says, holy smokes, that guy's a difference maker. We should be making a phone call on him. We should call on him. And so to me, the Olympic tournament really could be a gauge for what Elias Pettersson is and will be in the future as a Vancouver Canuck, or and I don't have any inside information, or with another team.
Well, he gets new and better, line mates and players to be around, so he's got that going in his favor, and he's also got a new culture around him.
Right,
Team Sweden at the Olympics, which is big because last week, John, we had a really interesting litmus test here as Teddy Blueger dropped back into the lineup after being gone for a few months. And Teddy Blueger's playing his ass off and putting up points and scoring goals. And he's looking around and going, what did I just jump into, though? Like, you guys are a wreck. And he called everybody out on it and said this is not good, what he's been dropped in. And it was a really interesting science experiment here because he hasn't really been around the team. We know injured players are sort of persona non grata in NHL roster circles. And he comes back to it and he's like, what the hell is this? Is there any way of salvaging that? Is there any way of, trying to get that back? Maybe this year, but certainly even into next year. Like, what can this Canucks management group do?
The one thing I would say, Blake, about that is that Teddy Blueger was brought in from Pittsburgh because Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford know the character, know what he brings on the ice, know what he brings in the room. And I dare I say, I suspect that they would have encouraged somebody to say something. And for a player to do it, that to me, I think is important. That reeks of, well, this team doesn't have a captain, but and I'm not suggesting Blueger is a captain, but that reeks of pure, unadulterated leadership, which there are at times people are wondering about. I mean, I love the fact that people are talking about Hronek is going to be the next captain. I think that's fantastic because you could see how much it means to him every game. But a guy like Blueger, who Jim and Patrick are familiar with and would know what he brings and has enough of a resume elsewhere to be able to say to people, we've got to get our stuff together. We've got to be better than this. So to me, being away from the team might have been a bonus for Blueger, so he could come in and with the veteran status that he has, he could say that.
Is this team at risk of walking through the wilderness for a while, though? It's one thing to rebuild, but it's another thing to be directionless. What are the signs that you see that this team can avoid that?
Like, I think they may have a quadrennial exploring supernatural British Columbia and all its wilderness.
Yes, it could be into the wild.
I think the best example of a team in a passionate hockey market that did this was Montreal. Okay,
great example.
But what Montreal did was they then relied completely on the draft. So the pressure then goes to people within the Canuck organization who are going to be at the draft table and going to be out scouting and be able to decide what kind of player are going to be members of this hockey club, what kind of character these guys have, and how do we rebuild that? And so the answer is, Blake, that's possible. But if you have, as Montreal has proven, if you have 2 or 3 good drafts, it's worth it. Tell me now, and I think if you brought every Montreal fan that you know into the room and said, you know what, you were not very good from the time they went to the, in the COVID thing, they went to the Stanley Cup final. But from that point on till last year, It was hard to watch the Canadiens play. We understood that they were rebuilding, and we were all on board. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? And every person would say yes. It was worth it. But it was worth it because, Slafkovsky has clicked. Caulfield has clicked. Hudson has clicked. Gooley has clicked. All
Suzuki,
of their great young
on and on it goes.
It was a trade.
It was a trade, but it was a rebuild trade, right? Like you were moving guys out to,
Right. So the answer is yes, but now the onus is on the organization to say, let's rebuild this properly and let's rebuild through the draft. We know this draft coming up is deep. We know it's deep. That's good. So let's hope the next couple of drafts are deep too. And, 3 years from now, when we're still talking and still doing this show and Pizza is still the sponsor, will you ask me, was it worth it? And I would say if they were as successful as Montreal, the answer is yes. If the answer is they're still floundering, the answer will be no.
It's an interesting comparison too, guys. They had 55 points in their first rebuild year coming out of that COVID Stanley Cup final. That's almost to the button where the Canucks are tracking to finish is at 55 points.
Is it now down to 55?
Yeah,
I guess it is. And just Suzuki was, before they made that cup final, lest anyone want to put me on E's and O's, but it was it was a get out trade. Yeah, it was the Pacioretty for Tatar, Suzuki, and a pick. Nevertheless, it was a get out trade. And to me, Montreal has always been the instructive example because it's a Canadian market. It's a similar size as this one. And of course, once upon a time, like that market was all about lifting Stanley Cups, not just getting to the playoffs, right? Like, there was a time when the Hab fan, the Yankee fan, and the Cowboy fan was basically like, wake me when we get to the final. Like that is the standard in this town for this franchise. And the Canucks, of course, have never had that. So could this market handle a rebuild? Yeah, of course it can. They're smart hockey fans here. They understand the pathway.
What that requires then, Matt, is transparency.
Yes. Yep.
Because Montreal was very transparent.
Yep.
Jeff Gorton's first press conference when he got there, Gorton, Hughes, St. Louis, when they showed up saying it's going to be hard for a couple of years and we hope you buy in. And I have said this, I will not back down from it. Montreal has the most sophisticated hockey fans in the world, and they understood it, and they actually reveled in it. They reveled in the rebuild.
Yep.
Like, look what Cole Caulfield's going to become. Do you remember last year when Demidov came to North America?
Oh,
he flew into Toronto, and there was Montreal media and fans at the Toronto airport with Demidov coming out of customs and immigration. And it was front page news in Montreal. They bought into the whole thing. And that's what has to happen in Vancouver. And I say this, and it has to, and there was very little negativity in Montreal through that time. And that's a challenge in Vancouver. That's a true challenge in Vancouver, to be positive about being bad.
The other instructive thing here, though, guys, is how many veterans survived from the COVID Stanley Cup final team to even just last year's playoff team. And I think the answer is Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher. So that's instructive when you look at this Canuck roster, though, guys, and say, okay, but who do you really need to have around for the next time that you make the playoffs? And they've got too many guys, John, on long-term deals. They've got more than Anderson and Gallagher. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, no, that's right. They got lucky because, and I say this knowing full well that both boys are BC guys, they got lucky that Carey Price and Shea Weber, who were those long-term contracts, walked away and went to LTIR, and they got that money.
Yeah.
Right? That helped. That helped. But your point is a valid one. I don't think in 2026, I don't think any manager, I don't think any coach, I don't think any team or any fan base should fall in love with anybody other than 4 or 5 elite players in the National Hockey League. They shouldn't.
Right.
Can't fall in love with them. Don't think they're the best thing since sliced bread.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think there's 5 or 6 guys, and you guys can debate this amongst yourselves later. 5 or 6 guys you'd say, we're not touching him. Everybody else has to be on the table.
Not wrong. Shifting gears to the Olympics. John, there's a saying, if you go to international hockey tournaments, everybody who is around them will say, hey, Canada is always the favorite. As I looked at Canada, and particular vis-a-vis the United States before these rosters were announced at the new year, I got to say, I looked at them and went, I think the United States is better on paper than us, in part because of the goaltending, and should be favorites. In the intervening 6 weeks, after seeing who the U.S. selected, seeing how they are now lining up in Milan as they go about their practices, line combinations, defense pairings, and then looking at the Canadian side of the ledger, I am feeling better and better about this. Before the first
paper,
game,
it's not close.
Exactly.
On paper, it's not
better
close.
and better about this before they drop the puck later this week. What says you? What
Even
do you
in
think?
goal?
Not in goal.
Even
not
in
in
goal?
goal.
No,
not in goal.
No. I think we may have to outscore some goaltending trouble, but I think we're capable of doing. The other thing is, I have this sense of security just about each and every time I see him in the jersey, and I saw it earlier this week. Sydney's not going to let us loose. He doesn't let our country loose when he's in the middle with that C on his chest.
And we've been saying too, John, any defensive win for the Americans, I think, is made up for the fact that our forwards are defensive minded and actually play the whole rink, and they can help out the defense a lot too. So anyway, your thoughts?
I think they are the co-favorites, but I shudder every time. Just watch out for the Swedes. Watch out for the Swedes. This is not a two-team tournament. It is not a two-team tournament.
Wow.
If the other thing I would say is that I think there are 5 teams that can win a medal. Obviously, Canada, the United States, Sweden, Finland, Czech. I think those 5 teams will be the.
Yeah.
I think we'll rise how good Germany is. We're not giving Germany very much credit right now, but if Philip Grubauer plays the way he has the last 2 months in Seattle, and Leon and Tim Stützle play the way they have played, and trust me, I guarantee you, Leon Draisaitl will be motivated after his speech in Calgary last week. He will be motivated. I think the Germans will surprise a lot of people. So this tournament is far from what we believed Four Nations was, which it's a moot point. It's going to be Canada, United States in the final game, I was there when pros showed up in '98. I lived it for 80 days in Japan. 80 days I was there. We had Russia and Czech in the final, and they were the 2 best teams. So it's yes, my red flag comes out and says, damn right, we're going to be great. We're going to be great. But other teams are good too. And then you watch at the world, after the World Juniors got going, I don't watch the preliminary rounds of the World Juniors. I don't show up until the playoffs. I just warned people on Twitter, hey guys, if you don't think what we're seeing in Minneapolis and St. Paul isn't a warning of what could occur in Milan, adjust your set, adjust it. The Europeans are really good at hockey. The Europeans know how to play the game. The Europeans, none of those guys that are going to play Milan have to adjust to playing on the NHL ice surface anymore. They are elite as well. So yes, Canada, yes, the United States, but boy, I think there's a giant asterisk beside the Swedes.
Yeah, and we'll leave it at that. Look forward to all the action starting later this week. 1998, the Nagano Olympics that John just referenced. Really, it brought the best hockey players under the superior global sports brand, right? Those Olympic rings. And ever since, we've missed it so much, John, over the last 12 years. And so I didn't think I would get into Four Nations last year. And then, of course, all the political backdrop started happening, and I was right into it. And I will be pacing my living room, I am sure, later this week or at some point over the next fortnight, watching all this go down. Thank you for this, my friend. Enjoy the games as well, and we'll catch up soon.
Can I do a blatant plug?
Yes.
Yeah. So as of tomorrow, every night at the conclusion of all the games, 100% hockey with our special guest commentator, Ken Hitchcock, every night.
Brilliant.
Wow.
No better guy to dissect the games than Hitch.
Yeah, I'm just going to say hello, Ken, and then he's going to talk for 10 minutes.
John, we used to say when Barry Trotz or Ken Hitchcock came into Vancouver, you could tell they would light up. Like their media availabilities were more like seminars, for heaven's sakes. Like you could tell how much they enjoyed being encircled by Canadian media, getting all of these questions, in some cases minutia, nuance about the game of hockey, and would sit there. I've seen 30 to 45 minute post-practice, post-morning skate scrums from Hitch and from Barry.
In their home markets, they had Scott and Dan.
Yeah,
Up here, they had 12 people.
They had the court, right? In the King's Court.
Stanley Cup final in 1999, Ken almost missed the national anthem because he was still talking to me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers, boys.